I was not aware that I was being invited to a meeting of the weight loss program. So thank you for having me nonetheless, and I cannot tell you how excited I am to be here. This is a very important congregation to my faith journey, and I'm so thankful to be invited by Mary, who I've admired for decades. And some of you, I know you out there, and thank you so much for being here. What a fun day. This is my first day back to work after a 3-month sabbatical. So I need a little grace. I've been out of work for 3 months, taking a break. On the very first day of my sabbatical, I watched this film. True. I started my sabbatical with this, very gentle film about the plague, grief, and death. That's the way to start your sabbatical. So I have a lot to talk about, and I'd like you to join with me. To get us on the same page, if you're new today and you have not seen Hamnet, good luck. It could be a little bit of a rough waters here because you don't know me, you don't know the film, but we're going to help you along. And if you're back there and you just get lost, you can just scroll through your phone. It's fine. I give you permission, not that you need it from me. But to get us started on the same level, hopefully, let's watch the trailer for this film called Hamnet.
Tell me a story.
What story would you like?
Something that moves you.
Is it true you know everything about a person by touching them here?
Not everything.
You touched me, what did you see?
I saw a landscape.
Saw a landscape?
Mm-hmm. Spaces, caves, tunnels and oceans, undiscovered countries.
Will you be brave?
Yes.
Will you be brave?
Deep, dark, black void.
I'll be brave.
What do you see?
What do you see?
You will live.
I almost start crying just watching the trailer again. Let me tell you a little bit more about this film if you don't remember or you have not seen it. It's obviously set back in the late 1500s, and it's really a story that imagines the family life of William Shakespeare, and especially his wife, Agnes, and their 2 twin children, Judith and Hamnet, of which the film is named after. Agnes, is important to know to understand this film, is a woman deeply connected to nature, to the inherited wisdom of her mother, and she understands that everything around her has spiritual meaning, including the herbs that she works with, and mixing potions. She's sometimes called a witch by those in the town because we label things that we don't understand, right? And the story really centers on Hamnet, their 11-year-old son, who dies when the plague enters their home. And if you've seen it, and you're a parent, or any human being that's got blood pumping through their body, can be a wreck to sit through because it's so sad at times. So she lives with this connection to those around her. Early in the film, Agnes and her brother Bartholomew have a connection, and they remember that they have this given wisdom from their parents to live life fully by keeping your heart open to the sun. And they also remember what's called the 9 herbs charm, which is a real thing. I looked it up. I was like really surprised. It wasn't just made up for the film. And it's this wisdom passed down by her mother, words that she believes has very healing power along with the herbs that she mixes. And this is the charm. She says, remember mugwort, which is a herb. Remember mugwort, what you brought to pass, what you readied at Regimeld. You're called Una, the most ancient plant. You defeat 3, you defeat 30, you defeat venom, you defeat air illnesses, you defeat the horror that stalks our land. And she says it almost like a breath prayer throughout the film. And when times get tough, she goes into action, says the prayer, the charm, and goes into action. Now, we have different charms. Our charms don't start with remember mugwort. Well, this is Hollywood, so maybe they do, but normally they don't. We have prayers, we have creeds, we have theology, we have an inherited wisdom from our parents, the things we've learned from the church. And beneath those things, unfortunately, sometimes lurks an assumption. And you know what I mean. There's an assumption under our prayers, our correct theology, our creeds. And it's this: if I believe the right things, say the right things in the right order, I deeply love enough, I know that things will work out. God will somehow take away the illness, take away my grief, fix my marriage, protect my child, take away Trump, take everything away that has somehow needs to be fixed in my life. Well, something obviously terrible happens in this family. And Agnes's daughter, Judith, becomes deathly ill. Judith and her twin brother, Hamnet, deeply love each other. In fact, if you've seen the film, you know they love each other so much they even sometimes exchange each other's clothing to kind of prank their parents. Well, this time, Hamnet discovers that his sister has the plague, and he wants to trade places with her. And sure enough, the plague passes over Judith and infects Hamnet, and he dies. During the time before he dies, and he's in agony, and if you've seen this, you know what I mean. The way they depict this is really disturbing. He's so in agony, and Agnes does what Agnes does best. She starts working the room. She sends off the family to get different things in nature. She starts doing her concoctions. She's reciting the 9 herbs charm over and over. She does everything that she could possibly do, and what happens? Hamnet dies, right? The healer cannot heal. This is more than bereavement for Agnes. This is a complete rupture of her world. The words didn't work, the herbs didn't work, the knowledge that got passed down didn't work. Her love could not save him. Suddenly, the woman who's all about opening your heart to the Son is starting to close hers. Let's move to John 20, read today by one of our graduates, thank you. John 20 is after the resurrection. It's after the crucifixion, I should say. Let's start there. It's after the crucifixion, and the disciples have followed Jesus. They had trusted him. They did everything that they're supposed to do, and they still watched him die. Their theology simply hadn't been challenged. Their world had collapsed. So both Hamnet and John 20, as you're catching this, confront the bargain that sometimes we make with faith. Again, if we believe correctly, pray faithfully, love deeply enough, somehow the catastrophe will pass us by. But what I've learned is that faith is not control. Faith is not control. It does not spare us from the unfixable. In this story read today, behind those doors which were locked, and the disciples were there trying to figure out what they're going to do in their agony and their fear, Jesus appears on the other side of the locked doors. He does not look like they expected, by the way. They thought he would come back as being pure if he came back at all. But he still got these wounds in his hands and his side. And Jesus said John says he showed them his hands and his side and asked the disciples to confirm. So he doesn't hide the evidence. Resurrection apparently is not about erasing the wounds. The wounds remain, but they no longer signify victory over death. They mean something else. They perhaps mean the testimony of the persistence of love. So what Jesus does not say to them are the things that maybe you've heard before are, hey, get over it. So I died. Or everything happens for a reason. If there's a phrase that needs to leave our vocabulary, that has got to be it, right? It doesn't help anybody. He also doesn't say, if you had enough faith, all of this would have never happened. He says instead, very simply, peace be with you. And then he says the most important thing later in the story. He says, as my Father has sent me, so I send you. So that means you cannot remain in that locked room. You're going to have to get out into the world. Christ meets us where the pain has closed us. Back to Agnes and her pain. After Hamnet dies, William and Agnes have been separated emotionally and with distance, and their marriage has been ripped. He goes and does what he does best, which is write a play. And he writes Hamlet. By the way, if you've not seen the film, Hamlet and Hamnet are interchangeable words. They mean the same thing. I looked it up. It's true. I lost you? Okay, you're still with me. Okay. Hi, everybody online, by the way. Good to see you. Hope you're not in pain today. You're just enjoying the conversation about pain. So Hamnet dies. William goes to London and writes a story about Hamlet. And that does one thing for Agnes. She's not only bewildered, but she is angry. How could they take the name and the story of their dead son and have William put it on stage for everybody to see? It was everything against what she thought was right. But her brother brings her to London reluctantly, and she begins to understand. William has not erased their grief. He has not erased their pain. He has given it a place to go, right? Their private sorrow has somehow become a story for others to share. Now, at the end of this play, it is quite incredible. Hamlet is dying on stage. And by the way, for Agnes, Hamnet and Hamlet become blurred as the play goes on. Those names become interchangeable at first, and then there is no distinction between the two. She sees her dead son on the stage. So she reaches out toward the dying Hamnet. And the dying Hamlet reaches out to her. And then something special is happening. Everybody at that play is reaching out as well. She fought her way to the thrust of the stage, and she's reaching her hands out toward Hamlet for her Hamnet, and everybody else is sharing in the grief. The woman who had every reason to close herself off is starting slowly to turn outward. Now, neither story, the John 20 story or the Hamnet story, are about somehow that we're going to restore the old life. We're going to make things great again, if you know what I'm talking about. Hamnet is not returned to Agnes, and the disciples do not return to the days before the crucifixion, where they're going through the hills of Palestine as he's talking about these parables. It doesn't happen. Sorrow is carried into a new form of life. Agnes reaches out at the Globe Theater. The disciples are taken out of the room into the Globe. Now, the final thing I want to share is that the Christian story makes no promise that somehow God will take us around the suffering. The promise is different. I will be with you through it. Through it. Psalm 23 doesn't say, I'm going to take you around this valley. It says, as you pass through the valley, I will be with you. Isaiah is not promised to go around the waters. As you go through the waters, I will be with you. So Agnes reaches out her hand. Jesus shows us his hands. And maybe faith isn't about pretending the wounds aren't there. Maybe faith is discovering that the places where life hurt us the most are the very places where we can have the greatest encounter. Agnes begins with the ancient wisdom: live your life open towards the sun, and then life gives her every reason to close her heart. The disciples look at Jesus' death. They go behind locked doors, and sometimes we lock ours too. And yet, what's amazing is somehow Christ keeps on showing up behind the locked doors. Christ somehow gets an amazing timing, shows up in our life when we are the most locked, and somehow unlocks us through the grief, through the fear, through whatever comes next, until perhaps we discover something that we couldn't have known before. There is life on the other side of what we thought would destroy us. And sometimes there's even joy. So live your life with your heart toward the sun and keep it there. Amen.